Okay, well, in the interest of timekeeping, I think we'll get started now. Well, once again, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this webinar, which is on the topic of the Canary Islands and the best EU tax incentives you should know as a chartered accountant. Just as a quick disclaimer, this session is being recorded. So we're holding this session in collaboration with Chamber Benefactor EBF Consulting, which offers tax management, accounting, employment and legal services for businesses throughout Spain. We're also joined by PROEXCA, which is a public trade company with the main goal of promoting the internationalisation services of Canarian companies and also attracting investments. And finally, we're joined by ZEC, which is the Canary Islands Special Zone, a public body formed by the Spanish Tax Ministry and the Canarias regional government. So just to get started, I'll introduce our four speakers for the session. Firstly, we're joined by Laura Marrero, who is a Spanish economist working at PROEXCA. She serves as the project manager at the Invest in the Canary Islands department. She has a great deal of experience in supporting foreign entities with their soft landing processes when registering in the Canaries. And then we're also joined by Delia Dominguez Montenegro, who has held a law degree since 1992. She's worked for many years at Caixa, which is a financial entity in Spain, specifically for the Foreign Trade Department. And now she works for the Canary Islands Special Zone Consortium as a senior officer. And then we're also joined by Natasha Mia Leyland, who is an advisor, a tax advisor and lawyer, and founder of EBF Consulting, which, as I mentioned, is a benefactor of the Chamber. She's an acting board member for the Association for Tax Consultants in Spain, and also a long-standing member of the British Chamber of Commerce in Spain. She's a business ambassador for PROEXCA, an expert in the structure of ZEC entities and tax incentives in the Canary Islands. And then finally, we're also joined by Veronica Lucore, who is an inward and outward trade advisor for UK and Ireland, specialising in oil, gas, renewables, film, gaming, tech and F&B. And she's currently based at the Spanish commercial office here in London. So after the presentations this morning, there will be time for a Q&A, approximately 10 minutes. So you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have to any of the speakers. I do encourage you throughout the duration of the webinar to put your questions into the Q&A or chat function at the bottom of your screen, and then we can address them at the very end. So yeah, now without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Laura.
Yep, thank you, Rebecca, and hi everyone. I'm happy to be here and being able to present all the opportunities that are offered by the Canary Islands as a commercial and business hub. Next, please, Rebecca. Well, during this presentation, we will go through an introduction about the Canary Islands, what are the key sectors, why invest in the Canary Islands, and what available incentives we have. As you can see here, we have the best taxation regime within Spain and the European Union. And thanks to our strategic location between three continents, Europe, Africa, and America, the Canary Islands are the perfect platform to implement your business. We have a population of 2.2 million with an expat community of 13%, and we are receiving every year 14 million of tourists. These are after pandemic numbers. As you probably know, we have an outstanding quality of life with safe and stable weather all year round. And not only that, that is very well known, we also have an ideal place to live and work with 5 universities and 39 international schools. We also have a great health system and good visa and immigration policies. Regarding the outsourcing industries, the Canary Islands are a natural lab where the excellent climate that we mentioned before and the biodiversity conditions make successful the implementation of various industries such as this one, which are renewable, blue economy, clean tech, astrophysics, biotech, audiovisual, logistics, oil and gas, research and development, and tourist, of course. And here we have some success cases of companies that have already chosen to come here to the Canary Islands and implement their businesses, such as Secret Source, Atos, CIB, eData Consulting. These are companies already well established here. And if we consider the potential all these mentioned sectors have in the Canary Islands, the next natural question would be, why should I invest in the Canary Islands, right? Well, first, we have a booming technological ecosystem with great synergies for startups. The most remarkable indicator here is that the GDP generated from this industry is reaching around 1 billion euros. And not only that, it is growing fast at a 4% on average. And another relevant insight is that according to Startup Link, 2 Canarian cities ranked among the top 3 startup ecosystem of the global island list, being the preferred location over Honolulu in Hawaii. And this is a great example of how is the impact we are having. Next, please. Thank you. Another reason to invest in the Canary Island is that the access and retention of talent is warranted. Actually, the region has the highest employment retention rate in Spain. And this is a challenge many companies are facing nowadays. And you might be familiar with the Nomad list, where Las Palmas de Gran Canaria is listed among the world's top 5 destinations for remote working, another huge indicator of the impact we are having. All advantages here, but it's true that we have another good one related to connectivity. As you can see on the slides, we have about 600 direct flights in a weekly basis connecting the Canary Islands with the United Kingdom. And also we have good connections with the main European cities and also with the West African coast with more than 44 direct flights in a weekly basis. Digital connections, nothing to complain about. The Canary Islands have submarine fiber optic cable connections with the European Union, American, and Africa. We also have a Tier 4 data center and the second most powerful supercomputer in Spain. Other key infrastructures are the Technology Parks Network, the Technology and Astrophysics Institutes, the Oceanic Platforms, and the Renewable Energy Institute. Moving to cost, the cost of living and the operational ones are the lowest in Europe, which is also a key factor for the decision makers of many companies that are choosing the islands to expand the business. Well, as you know, we are part of Europe, the European Union, so we have full access to all the market and all the available fundings. So your company or your clients can benefit from the fiscal transparency, the international treaties, and the financial programs which are offered by the European Union. And moving forward to the last section of this presentation, let's talk about the tax incentives. which are fully sheltered by the European Union. Let's say that the most remarkable ones are the corporate tax of 4% is the lowest in Europe, and the 0% withholding tax. In addition, we are offering a tax credit that goes from 45 to 75% on expenses related to research and development activities, and also the possibility to cash back the R&D and tech innovation activities. But my colleague Delia from the Canarian Special Zone will go into details in a minute. Moving to funds, there are several lines from the private and the public sectors. Some institutions are now offering great financial support for projects, and you can also count on a well-established venture capital and business angels network. There are also possibility to request financial support for tailored programs for your employees in the field of interest for your company. And well, with all the presented information, I can guarantee you that the Canary Islands are the perfect location to implement your business, because we are offering solutions to all the challenges that companies are facing nowadays in this competitive environment, such as taxes, talent, and cost. And I would like to encourage you just to count on us to get information and support, to get information about trade missions, and at the end, set up your businesses in the Canary Islands. Our contact details from PROEXCA will be in the next slide. This is the team. We invite you to email us for more details and information at invest@proexca.es. Thank you, everybody, for your attention, and thanks to the Spanish Chamber. And now my colleague Delia from the Special Canarian Zone will introduce you to her presentation. Thank you.
Sorry, Delia, we just can't hear you. If you'd like to unmute.
Sorry. Hello, everybody. Do you see my presentation now?
Not yet, no.
Oh, this is, wait a minute. We have tested before, or maybe now. Now? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hello and welcome to everybody, and thanks to the Spanish Chamber of Commerce and all the institutions, and obviously thanks to the public for being here in order to listen about all the magnificent conditions that the Canarian archipelago can offer to foreign investment. I work for the Canary Islands Special Zone Consortium, which is, as Rebecca has said, a public body formed by the Tax Ministry, which is the Spanish public administration, tax authority, and the regional government of the Canary Islands. As Laura has said, we have, wait a minute. As Laura has said, in the Canary Islands, we have a special framework, which is our specific tax and fiscal regime, specific for the Canary Islands. The reason for this specific system is obvious, due to the fact that we are an outermost territory in the European Union. We enjoy some advantages because we cannot use scale economies, and traditionally we have enjoyed these benefits. Indeed, Canary Islands Special Zone is the last tool that has implemented this fiscal and tax framework. We are not a tax haven. We offer basically tax advantages. We are not considered a tax haven at all because of our substantial requirements, and I talk about this in a minute. And obviously, because all the rules around the world consider us as not a danger, okay? Because it's totally guaranteed by the European Union. Our regime has been passed by the European Union Commission. We have to prorogate it with every singular European budget, and it has provoked that the system in itself has been improving during the next prorogations we have lived from year to 2000. Okay, so the SEC is considered, and not only the SEC, all this fiscal and tax regime that is in the Canary Islands is protected by the Spanish Constitution, is protected by the Treaty of the European Union, is authorized by the European Commission. We are not a danger according to the rules of OECD. As I have said, it's not a tax haven because in order to be considered a tax haven, there must be no exchange of information. And this is clear because we are part of the tax ministry, and we have substantive requirements, which is the future-oriented way that OECD want to avoid or want to fight against tax avoidance. Okay. Which is the jewel of the crown, as I like to say, the corporate income tax, because the type of rate is 4%. Okay, so you have a comparison among different countries. The source is OECD. So we are very competitive, but we are very competitive because of our situation. So in the past, maybe our geographical situation was a disadvantage, but now that we are living the digital economy, we consider that different companies could do business in the Canary Islands with no problems at all. As I have said, we are not considered a tax haven because we have substantial requirements. These requirements are related mainly to the creation of employment. The Canary Islands have traditionally shown bad figures about employment. So the most important point for the administrations is creating jobs in the Canary Islands. And one step more, creating talented and quality jobs. So this requirement of jobs depends on the island where you want to put the company, because one of the requirements is to create a new company. It could be a new company in itself, or it can be a new branch in our territory. We always said we are not a tax haven. We are not a tax haven because you need to put here your tax domicile, but not only your tax domicile. You have to do the management of the company from the Canary Islands. That's why we also ask for one director, at least one director that must be resident in our territory. Another important thing is the group of activities that you can develop in the Canary Islands Special Zone, because we have some restrictions in terms of those activities that are very next to the concept of tax haven, as financial, insurance, or, for example, passive activities as real estate, for example. Those activities that are not, that are very well developed in our islands, are part of tourism, and we will see in the next slide. As I have said, we distinguish between the islands where you put your company. We are talking about the capital islands, which are the biggest one, This is Tenerife and Gran Canaria, so the requirements will be 5 jobs. We are talking about jobs, independence, okay, not freelance. The worker must be independent of his manager. And then the investment, these jobs must be operating in a period of 6 months after you begin the activity. The process in the ZEC is an authorized process, so you have to present us a pre-authorization, which is a document where you put your details about the person or the company who is to found the new incorporated company in the ZEC, the money you want to invest, the person you are thinking to engage, and a description of the activity you want to develop from the islands. This is the most important points. You also have to say which is your international or national market for your products or services. So when you have received this previous authorization, you will obtain a resolution from the public body, and till this moment you have a period of 18 months that can be prorogated for 9 months more in order to begin with the activity in itself. During this period, you cannot begin with activity, you cannot do the investment, you cannot enroll people, because this is the point from which you are going to begin with activity and you are going to fulfill all the requirements. So till this moment in which you have registered the company in our specific register, and you have to show that you have a company, not only a project, then you have 6 months in order to enroll people and 2 years in order to make the investment. Investment will be in capital islands, 100,000 euros, in assets related to the activity and assets that must be necessary in order to develop the activity. If we are talking about non-capital islands, which is the rest, Fuerteventura, Lanzarote, Palma Gomera, Hierro, and Graciosa, because now it's also considered an island, the requirements for employment is only 3, and the investment is reduced to the half of the figure I've mentioned before. As Laura says, we are trying, in the Canary Islands, we are trying to attract investment and startups, because normally the startups have a lot of relation, or they are linked, connected to ICT activities. And normally these ICT companies don't require so many investment, because they use another forms of working, because they use leasing. Sometimes they have no assets at all, because they don't need furniture, they don't need, they need hardware and software, but they can rent it. So we have recently passed a law. It's not a law, it's a specification, a circular, a specification from our royal decree law that mention some exemptions at the time of creating the company, talking about investment. So you can exchange employment for investment. If you are able to create more jobs related to some activities, for example, activities intensive in knowledge, or activities in certain priority areas, such as audiovisual, ICT, video games, technological in general, you can create only 1 job more. For example, if you are going to put the company in Gran Canaria or Tenerife, you can create 6 jobs with no investment. And in the rest of the islands, you can create 4 jobs with no requirement of investment. If you are in another sector, and this sector we consider that's intensive in employment, for example, we can consider call centers, customer services, cleaning services for hotels or things like that. You have a scale, so you can do a minimum investment, but it must be because the rest of the investment will not be considered because you are able to create more jobs. For example, you see on this scale, which is the standard for big islands and which are the standard for small islands. So I think it's not so relevant, because if you want this information, I will share with you with no problem. In order to consider which activities are intensive in knowledge, you can, on one hand, certificate as innovative PYME, and you will have to go to the industry ministry in order to obtain this certification, or you have to show that you are developing research and development. We have a big attraction, or we are attractive to those companies whose residence is not only in the European Union, but also in third countries, because we can enlarge the application of the directive for non-resident companies to third countries. So at the time when a SEC company obtains benefits, the type of rate will be 4%. And then when the company wants to return profits in form of dividends, or when they want to return interest because there was a loan between the parent company and the subsidiary, there's no withholding tax at the time of returning these profits. Today in Spain, there's only 5% for companies, because it's not exactly withholding tax. It's a way that the government has done for paying certain kind of bureaucratical expenses. Okay, so we are interested for third countries, and now Great Britain is out of because of Brexit, is out of the European Union, so you can be a target in itself. As I have said, no tax haven, so substantial requirements. Not all tax base can enjoy the reduced type of rate. Okay, it depends, as always, on employment you're able to create. So there's a minimum, which is the first figure you see, and this is for 3 or 5 jobs. In terms of avoiding investing, these figures will change for 4 jobs or 5 jobs, depending on small or big islands. And if you create an additional job, this tax base will be incremented in $1.5 million. So you can go enlarging your tax base with every singular job you can create, till to the moment that you are able to create more than 5 jobs. So there will be no limit. You have to take this into consideration. There won't no limit according to SEC law, but in general terms, all the state heads, and SEC is stated as the rest of our fiscal and economic regime, has another limit, which is the 30% of your billing. Okay, so you have to take this into consideration. But normally you can, the different tools or instruments of our tax regime are compatible, and normally there's no excess. And if it occurs, so you can apply for SEC and for the other tools that Laura mentioned in other slides. As I have said, the corporate income tax is the jewel of the crown, but we have also important advantages or exemptions in VAT. We don't apply VAT. The name is IHIC, and it's more or less the same, but with less type of rate, and no stamp duty at the time of creating the company or enlarging the social capital. I mentioned that there are some excluded activities, like holding activities, financial, insurance, construction, because we have developed very well construction till this moment, retail, hotels, restaurants, and catering. So we are all the public bodies in the same way in order to attract a certain type of companies, not only for logistic, but only for the ship repairers, repairmen, for technological activities. So you can demand us if your activity is considered or not. Consultancy, for example, is also permitted, and you can consult us at the time of trying to know if we will accept you in this regime. We are very interested in spreading the idea that we are not a tax haven, that we are not a danger system, and all the future rules about tax avoidance are in this way. Substantial requirements and the kind of activities you can develop. So we fulfill all these requirements in OECD. So we consider that in the future, SEC will be a good option for companies. So that's on my side, and I finish sharing the slides, and I will present you Natasha. I consider her as a colleague because he's a tax consultant, but we have a very, very good relationship. And we have been working with some companies in order to attract them to SEC. So Natasha, it's a pleasure for me to say you go on.
Okay, thank you very much, Delia, for that. I'm just going to share my slides from the beginning. Just bear with me a second. Muy bien. Okay. Here we go. Everybody can see that okay, yeah? Right.
Yes.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with everybody this morning. Thank you to the British Chamber and also Veronica from PROEXCA for organising this event this morning. Hopefully we'll be giving you an overview in general on what we can offer from the Canary Islands. So in my intervention today, what I'd like to do is just give you an overview on the business requirements and the kind of information that you would need to be aware of when you're advising your clients, taking into consideration today we're dealing with other professionals within our sector, and so we're trying to gear all of the information towards that to help you when you're dealing with your clients. Okay. So firstly, I think it's important for you to understand the different structures and the different tools that would be used in order to be able to advise your clients on how they would be able to do business in the Canary Islands. One of the first and main structures would be an SL company, which is the Sociedad Limitada, equivalent to a UK limited company. That would require a minimum share capital of €3,000. I'm talking now about general business. So if we were not dealing with a client that would want to or would be able to comply with the minimum requirements in order to apply the 4% corporation tax, which is what our colleague Delia has just been explaining, we wouldn't want that to be a reason for any future clients to not think about doing businesses in the Canary Islands, because we do have other incentives that would be able to encourage them to structure their business from the Canary Islands. If they were to incorporate a general limited company, then in the first 2 years of carrying out that activity, if it was to be a new activity here over here, then they would be able to pay a reduced corporation tax of 15% during the first 2 years. Our general rate is 25%. They also have the benefit of our equivalent of value-added tax in the Canary Islands. Instead of the mainland where it is 21%, we have a reduced rate of 7%. Even if they were subject to paying the general rate of corporation tax because they didn't comply with those requirements that permit them to pay the reduced rate of 4% corporation tax. We also have the RIC, which is the Reserva de Inversiones en Canarias, which is the investment reserve. What does that allow a company to do? Well, that basically allows a company that's generated an amount of profit that's going to be subject to the 15% or the 25%. It allows them to invest, take basically up to 90% of that profit and invest it into what we call the RIC. The company will have a number of years to decide on what they want to invest that money in, but it does have to be invested in assets that are going to be used for the development of the economic activity that that company is going to be carrying out. They would then need to ensure that they keep those assets for a minimum period of 5 years. So there is automatically an obligation to ensure that that activity continues during a certain period of time in order for you to be able to invest up to 90% of your profit in those fixed assets. Taken into consideration, that would then mean that you're only going to be paying your 15 or 25% corporation tax on the remaining 10% of profit. I think that's really important for you to understand, because sometimes if you've got a client that's wanting to perhaps carry out business in the Canary Islands, but see that they may not comply with the requirements for the SEC, doesn't matter. We also have these other incentives that I think are very important for us to point out today for you. As Laura was mentioning in her presentation, we also have the other tax credits for those companies that are going to be invested in the international Spanish or co-productions. You've got the technological innovation tax credits, and also any tax credits that can be applied to research and development. The other tool that can be used and is used quite often is when you have, for example, a limited UK company that wants to continue to trade in their own name, but instead want to open up what we consider a permanent establishment in Spain. What does that mean? That means it will be the UK limited company with a UK limited company name, but they will just need to obtain what we call a CIF, which is an identification number for that company in the Canary Islands, and they would remain UK tax resident, but the permanent establishment would then pay 25% tax on any of those profits that have been generated. But we can also use the RIC for that as well. They would need to take into consideration that in order to carry out that activity in Spain, anybody that's working from that may be a British national would need to require a Spanish residence visa, which would be in accordance with the legislation for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial activities. And of course, if they have any staff that are going to be transferred from the UK over to the Canary Islands, then equally they would have to obtain their work visa. Also point out that the permanent establishment would be able to take advantage of the lower IHIC levels that we have in the Canary Islands. I just want to mention also, it was pointed out by Laura, and it's really, really important issue with how the Canary Islands have grown, especially during and since the pandemic. This is something that was growing rapidly beforehand, but of course, since the pandemic, and people's tendency perhaps want to continue with their work, but develop a better lifestyle. It's become very popular now for people to remote work. So we have two possibilities. I'm going to discuss the first one here, which is where you can have somebody that can remote work in the Canary Islands for up to 90 days. You may be aware that as a British national, you can only be on Schengen territory for 90 days within the last 180. So if you have somebody that perhaps wants to come over and test the market, they're perfectly able to do that without having to obtain any kind of visa. They would just need to use their European health insurance card, which is still valid even though Brexit took place. That was agreed between both countries. And that would allow that person to perhaps develop themselves with regards to organisation skills, working from another country, and also the possibility, as I said before, of doing some market research for business in the Canary Islands. The other possibility would be where somebody decides to run the business literally from the Canary Islands. If you have any clients that have the business already structured in the UK, but say one of the directors decides that they can still continue to carry out their job, but they want a better lifestyle, take their family to the Canary Islands, there's no problem them doing that. We've got all the infrastructure set up for people to do that. However, they would need to obtain their visa, their work visa. They would become a tax resident of Spain if they're here with their family and they're residing here for more than 183 days. Our legislation does specify that you would be considered a tax resident living in Spain for more than 183 days, unless you can certify that you are considered a tax resident in another country. So we do always need to take into consideration other factors when determining whether that person is going to be a tax resident of Spain. It is not purely only based on those 183 days, although that is the major factor that we do take into consideration here. They will have an obligation, once registered as self-employed in Spain, to pay into the Spanish social security system, which is going to cover them for the healthcare and any pension contributions. It gives them the opportunity, as I mentioned before, one of their reasons may be to change their lifestyle but continue to manage their UK business. And also it gives them the possibility of exploring the markets here in Spain and in the Canary Islands to determine whether they actually want to explore and set up a business as such over here as well. One point I think is interesting to mention when we were talking about the structures, if we've got a Spanish limited company that's going to be incorporated with shareholders that are residents outside of Spain, while they will not need to obtain a work visa because they're just simply going to be shareholders and not physically working in the company, each shareholder and named administrator will have an obligation to obtain their NIE. Their NIE is just simply an identification number in Spain. It doesn't make them fiscal residents, but they do need to have that identification number. If they are going to be working in Spain, then in addition to that, they are going to have their work visa. Just pointing that out for you. And I think just to conclude, a bit similar to what other colleagues today have been mentioning, we've got the fantastic location between 3 continents, which gives us an excellent gateway for business between Europe and Africa. We do have the lowest corporation tax in Europe, and we also have the highest tax incentives for research and development, innovation, film, and renewable energy. So just like to thank you very much for being here with us today. I hope that it's giving you an overview and for you to, as professionals, to be able to assist with any clients that are looking at relocating to the Canary Islands. Thanks again to the Spanish Chamber and to PROEXCA, and I'll pass you on to Veronica, who is based in London and has gone to an awful lot of effort to arrange today's event. Was all of her effort has gone to a lot of service there. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Hi, everyone. I think almost everything has been told already. I just want to say that I'm based here in London. I work for PROEXCA, in charge of the inbound and outbound activities between UK, Ireland, and Canary Island. So just feel free to contact us if there's going to be at the end of the presentation email from all of us. There we have two actually. PROEXCA have 2 main departments: the promotion and the investment. On the investment, we have had recently a really high demand from the UK on filming and gaming, as well as advertising. Renewables are a very strong industry at the moment in the Canary Islands, going to be built 4 offshore wind farms, the first ones in Spain. So just please be free to contact us. I will contact you if you have any question. I could be the main point to put you in contact with the PROEXCA department. And if you want to go into as well with SEC and Natasha, feel free. On the other hand, we're going to have an event on the 10th of December, November here in London. It's an outbound and inbound event called Beyond the World, the new British Canarian market, trade market. And we're gonna be able to sit with the investment department from PROEXCA if you wanna go further with any question or any project that you have in mind. So please contact me. I will send you the invitation for the event if you wanna come over. It will be at the Strand 180, the 10th of November. It will depend on the sector that you're specialized. We have divided the event in two. So in the morning it's going to be more outbound. It's going to be specifically for food and beverage. And in the afternoon it's going to be tech, filming, gaming, audiovisual. So yeah, that's it. Here are our emails. If you could put it again, Rebecca. Laura, my colleague, she's in charge of investment. Delia, SEC, Natasha, Comfort Consulting, and me. So the general one for this event will be me then to contact. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming for the event. I will pass my word to Rebecca.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing your insights. We really appreciate all the effort that's gone into all of those presentations. As I mentioned before, we do have some time now for any questions that you might have. So please do feel free to put them in the Q&A function. I'll give you just a minute or so to do that, or even in the chat function below. I will share this screen again with the contact details at the end too, and I'll also be sending an email. Just for now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen to get through any questions. Okay, so one question that we have here is, what are the regulations surrounding a UK company in the Canary Islands who wants to hire a UK worker for longer than 90 days in their Spanish office on a temporary basis?
Shall I answer that question?
Please.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so if there's a UK limited company that wants to employ somebody in Spain and they have no connection with Spain, i.e. that we wouldn't consider that they have a permanent establishment in Spain just by employing that member of staff, then what they would need to do is appoint a company, EBF Consulting, for example, or appointed in these instances as what we call a Oficina de Representación, which is a representative office, and then they would take the responsibility of that Spanish member of staff, where they would generate their payroll at the end of each month. They would pay their social security on behalf of that UK limited company. So there would be an obligation to pay national insurance in Spain for those employees that are working on Spanish territory. They wouldn't be, that the UK contract is still valid, but for social security purposes, they would have to pay social security in Spain for those Spanish employees. I hope I've answered that question clear enough for you.
I think that makes sense, Natasha. Thank you very much. Any last questions before we finalize? We have another minute or so if you'd like to put them into the Q&A or the chat function. Well, either way, that's what we have for now. And just to reiterate, if you do come up with any questions following the session, I will be sharing everybody's contact details again, so please do feel free to get in contact with any of today's speakers directly, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to liaise with you and answer any further questions that you might have. Following this session, I'm also going to be sharing the presentations that were shared and then the recording from this session too. So if you have a colleague or perhaps anyone who you think might be interested in the information that was shared today, please do feel free to send over the recording to them. But we will also be promoting it on our social channels, and it will be up on the Chamber's YouTube channel for you to access whenever you need. But just to, well, I think another question has come through. Okay, so I'll just read out this one last question. When speaking about the WHT, you talked about a 5% regarding non-deductible expenses, but wouldn't that be applicable for the profits received at the level of the company, not on the repatriation to its shareholders? That question is in the Q&A function.
Yeah, that's for me. Okay, we are talking about withholding tax when we return profits. Okay, so we don't talk about how the benefits are considered in Spain. In Spain, if you are a SEC company, you pay 4%, okay, because you are a SEC company. If you are not a SEC company, you will pay 25%, for example, or in the 2 previous years, when you are beginning the activity, you can also ask for only 15%, which will be in the future the minimum apart from SEC, okay? And we talk about withholding tax or no withholding tax when you return these profits. If not, we are not talking about withholding tax. So you will be taxed at 4% or at 25% or at 15% type of rate. I don't know if it's clear. Natasha, do you think it's something I
think you wouldn't. The thing is, the question here is referring to non-deductible expenses, and that wasn't mentioned in any of the presentation. I think there's been a misunderstanding on what the 5% was referring to, because you were referring to the 5% withholding tax, no, not the non-deductible expenses.
So the question is in the Q&A function, but I'm not sure that if there was another follow-up question, please do feel free to put it in there, and then the speakers can address it.
Because they said for the profits received at the level of the company, not on the repatriation to its shareholders. Okay, if you receive benefits, it depends on if you are a company and you receive profits from another company because you are a shareholder. In other ways, how do you receive the profit? Okay, maybe because you are, if you have a loan, you receive interest. But if you are a company, you receive a profit because you are a shareholder.
As a dividend.
No, I don't.
As a follow-up to this question, they're referring to a subsidiary.
Subsidiary paying dividends, or subsidiary returning interest, or
yes,
dividends
as a subsidiary.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay, so SEC will be the subsidiary, I imagine.
Yeah.
So there's no withholding tax, but now, according to Spanish law, this is only 5%. There was no withholding tax at all just 1 year ago, and now it's 5%, but it's not exactly considered as a withholding tax, because according to Spanish law, it's like paying some bureaucratic expenses. So, but it's, you are going to receive free 95%, okay? I think that's the key.
I think that's, yeah, just to summarize there then, Jaime, if the company generated a profit of €1,000 and then they did a distribution, and and the distribution was a dividend of say €1,000, then you know that they won't receive €1,000, it'll be €1,000 less 5%, which is going to be the withholding tax then paid to the Spanish tax authorities. So they will then receive the remaining amount. And then of course there's going to be a tax obligation in their country of origin where they'll be able to offset that 5% in their country of residence to avoid double taxation. It will be offset as a credit in the country of residence to avoid double taxation. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to just quickly share the contact details once again. Thank you very much for everyone for sending in your questions, and thank you again to all of our expert speakers for sharing such insightful and informative presentations. It's really been a pleasure to hold this webinar with all of you, so thank you again. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and we hope to see all of you at any future events held by the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. Have a great day, everyone, and take care. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye, girls.
Bye.